Now, in May 2019, the Weather Agency moved to grant itself immunity from legal suits triggered by its focus in a proposed law change, that is in 2019. The Kenya Met Department has often been blamed for inaccurate weather predictions, misjudging weather patterns, leading to losses in other sectors such as agriculture on poor guide to the farming calendar of the year. The Ministry of Agriculture has faulted the weatherman for giving inaccurate forecasts that hurt food production in 2019, thus affecting economic growth. The forecast prompted farmers in Western Kenya, for instance, to plant in March 2019, with many by the end of the year staring at failed crops and losses running into millions of shillings on fertilizer, seed and planting costs. So why the inconsistencies in the weatherman's prediction? We are joined by the Deputy Director of the Kenya Meteorological Department, that is Dr. Richard Moita. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the program, and we are focusing on the unpredictable weather situation in the country or patterns. There is a lot to discuss from the local and equally across the international front. But what generally is the main concern here is why are you or your department in the face of Kenyans or the public always getting it wrong when it comes to predictions?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I would say that the Kenya Meteorological Department is a national institution mandated to provide climate and weather information for public safety and also for other decisions and planning in various sectors. And I guess that first, the information that the Kenya Met Service provides wrong forecasts in itself is wrong. Probably, I don't want to use a very hard word like it's evil, because, we are a scientific, institution which bases on scientific evidence. And therefore, if one has any information that indicates that the predictions are not proper, then they need to provide evidence. And you mentioned about 2019 predictions.
Yes.
I don't know which specific ones, because we have provided information on different timescales from daily, weekly, monthly, and seasonal. And we always follow up, and we have many, kind of feedback mechanisms where we also want to hear from those who are on the ground in terms of how they view the predictions. And we have not received such such a claim that our predictions are wrong unless evidence is provided. But we try to give what our predictions would serve for the best interests of Kenyans.
Okay, but otherwise, to just quote you here, in April 2019, you said near normal to above normal rainfall expected over almost parts of the country. In Western Kenya, Moyale in Marsabit County, Central Highlands, and depressed rainfall in northeastern province. And I quote you, you said predictions were that rainfall will not start uniformly across the country, but Cyclone Idai in Mozambique and Zimbabwe did broke continuity, and this is why the dry spell prolonged. This was a statement you issued after the rains that you predicted never materialized. Therefore, you have given not the right prediction.
We gave the right predictions, but remember that the weather is not static. It's so dynamic. And actually, it is influenced by so many factors. Some of the factors could possibly highlight the issues of climate change and so on. But for that particular season, that's the March to May 2019 season, we had rightly predicted. From our predictions, we expected what you have just mentioned. But however, on the way, we actually gave an update. Because you see, our work is not only to give predictions, we also provide updates in terms of what changes. It's just like if last night you slept well, probably if the doctor, looks at you in the morning or examines you, probably they might say, well, this person was okay last night, but now the temperatures have risen. So in other words, in monitoring, we gave an update that, we have the influence of the cyclone, which has actually brought drier conditions than normal. And therefore, they were actually the ones we attributed to why the predictions as predicted did not turn out the way they did. And therefore, there was evidence that this is what happened. Otherwise, if we did not provide that, or people did not see that, then probably we would have been, you know, rightly wrong in our predictions.
Okay, given that you have mentioned climate change, it's equally important that we need to put into perspective the other element of the imbalance in temperatures on east and west of the Indian Ocean, leading to the, for instance, wildfires in Australia, and equally the rainfall that was experienced end of 2019 in mainland East Africa. But before we come and equally put into perspective the outcome of the Madrid COP25 summit in Spain, there are institutions that equally are blaming you for what they say is failure to give the accurate, because that is the word we just need to focus here. For instance, the Kenya Red Cross Society, the Red Crescent, which is global, say the Kenya Met Department climate science is not as advanced as that in the Western countries. And this has led to inaccurate predictions. Therefore, the point is, why are your margins of prediction, why are your margins of error in terms of your prediction so high? Because, for instance, if you listen to the principal meteorologist, Patricia Nyung Guru, who serves in the same departments as you, she says 66% of 100 is mostly, that is the word she used, and 33% means several places across the world. Therefore, you are inconsistent with your predictions, according to your critics.
Well, we did some analysis way back in 2016. And in this case, we were looking at the performance of the rainfall during the short rain season, October, November, December. And we found that for the predictions that we give, because we have divided our country into regions, we call them homogeneous regions, we found that our predictions are as accurate as 89 to 95%. In especially the eastern areas, highlands of the eastern highlands of Kenya and parts of central. The only lower accuracy indices that we see were partly in the northwest, areas like Lodwar and so on, and that's simply because of a few observation networks. And therefore, when we hear that there are institutions that say our predictions are rightly not so accurate, we would like them to provide more information, because like the Kenya Red Cross, as far as I know, they rely on our information 100%. And most at times they use that information for emergency planning and response and any other form of humanitarian support. And we have even worked in them in projects in the past. And they have always been very happy, because they have been able to save a lot of costs, to save lives, and so on. And therefore, I would still stick to my argument that unless there is proper evidence, whether it is statistical or scientific, that indicates, yes, your forecasts were wrong in this or that way, then that's when now probably we can discuss further.
Well, the point is that you are being faulted for, being at the tail end of the climate science when it comes to the technology that is put into use. But then again, you have equally caused confusion in many parts of the country, especially, to use this term, the food basket regions, say, for instance, in Uasin Gishu and in Trans Nzoia counties. A false start of promising rain in early April made farmers to plant. It led to confusion, and that has had an effect on the earnings of the farmers, the expensive food across the country, prompting the government to import, because you expected rain, you predicted rain, the rains never came, the government imported what it needed, and that importation of subsidies has had an economic impact in the country. Therefore, still, you cannot run away from blame, isn't it? To just quote you in one of the other interviews you said was equally an important element in regards to, of course, the court case in May 2019, where you said we cannot be blamed for any damages done afterwards.
Yeah, as you rightly put it, as I said, the mandate for the Kenya Meteorological Department is to provide meteorological and weather information for safety and also for other planning and decisions. Therefore,
Which all never turned out to be accurate in most cases.
But the Kenya Met Department, where it stops is in the provision of the services. In terms of advisories, there are other agencies which are supposed to provide support for various sectors. For example, in the agriculture sector, the Ministry of Agriculture is a huge ministry which actually supports farmers in various ways, whether it's agronomical, whether it is technical, or any other forms of support. And therefore, what happens is, once we provide the information, it is upon other agencies to take it up. For example, Kenya Met Department is not an expert in in terms of what type of seeds to plant, in terms of what type of agronomic activities to undertake. And therefore, it is the agriculture experts who now take up the information, the weather information that we provide, and then package it and tell the farmers, according maybe to FAO guidelines, that the Met department said that you will receive depressed rainfall. Can you go for Katumani seeds? Can you go for this? So for us, it's not our mandate, and therefore probably the blame is being put on the wrong side, because for us, we expect a response and preparedness. People need to prepare, plan with the information, because we say information is power. So if on one part, either the farmer or the person who is supposed to advise the farmer on what to do with the information failed, then for us, we cannot be blamed for what we have not actually done or participated in.
Well, Dr. It's a case of deflecting the attention here, because it's your key mandate to provide the forecast, the prediction here.
Yes,
not your
yes.
sole responsibility to plant. But when you say it will rain, say, in February 2020, I, as a farmer, plan that, and it doesn't materialize, then I am economically burdened because of your predictions. So still you cannot run away from blame because of some of the errors of margins you have provided and the inaccuracy, and that's what your critics are saying. For instance, listen to Dr. Christopher Oludle from the Meteorology Department, University of Nairobi. He says the department is getting it wrong because of inconsistencies in its data, and that is very specific scientific data.
As I said, unless you provide evidence statistically, because I can provide thousands and thousands of evidence, you know, probably you can call me on this, on historical data and forecasts that we have provided from the department. And I can tell you for free that in the last decade, the Kenya Met Service has improved immensely. Even those who are saying from out there that probably we do not have the modern technology and so on, they are completely wrong. I would invite probably Ebro to come and visit the department. And probably we give you all the statistics because they are there for public consumption. And you will be amazed in terms of the goodness, or in terms of the accuracy of the forecasts that we give. Actually, we show you the feedback from our users, you know, across the country. You will be so amazed. So that, such that even the information now that you are providing, yes, will not be so much solid, and especially where we say that farmers were told the rains will start in February and they started planting and so on. That was what they were supposed to do. But if they got it wrong, probably because of the way they plan in their decision process, then probably we may not be able to ascertain what happened. Okay,
some of this issue, when you look at your predictions, human predictions for that matter, yeah, God's power and miracle at the end of the day is behind our comprehension, but still you are being accused, and you yourself said the authority is not liable for any changes, and this was seeking to immune or wrap up in immunity your officers in case of loss or damage done because of the information you have provided. However, some of the factors you have alluded to here on the program are key. Weather changes, and you pointed out Cyclone Idai in Mozambique and Zimbabwe. And for instance, you look at the Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, it's drying up. We had temperatures not balancing up on the east and west of the Indian Ocean, for instance, leading in the ravaging wildfires in Australia, and equally the rains that continue to ponder in mainland eastern part of the continent. Do you attribute this to climate change, which seems to be a debate which holistically is on the table of the United Nations?
The global, mean average temperatures have been rising in the last 5 decades. And that's a pointer that the world globally is warming up. And remember that human beings and other creatures and other systems within the environment, they respond to weather changes. And therefore, one thing from the global perspective, yes, climate change is a reality, and is a debate that is ongoing. But when you look at specific weather events, then you need to interrogate further, because there are certain indices or thresholds we look at in order for us to come and declare maybe at the rooftop that yes, this is climate change. Because when you go back and look at what has been happening in East Africa or Africa in general, drying and wet periods, drying and wet periods, they are not so new. I can give you a chronology of several, even very, very severe droughts that happened in this country. Very high, heavy rainfall that happened in this country. Even in Australia, the bushfires in Australia is not new. Actually, I did my PhD in Australia. And the worst fires occurred while I was there. And this is about 10 or so years ago. And that was just historical. Even in 1966, there was a terrible fire that almost finished the whole of Australia. So in essence, we need to actually look at the data and establish the magnitude, whether it's climate change or climate variability. Because if it's climate change, then it means the region being affected by climate change does not go back to what it originally used to experience. In other words, it changes to something completely different, and that continues unless people now change through other ways of bringing back what was there.
Okay, variables, climate change, two key important points that you have mentioned. But again, do you feel then that there's need for commitment, especially from the rich nations, the US, China, Brazil, and India, which are, according to the 2015 Paris Climate Accord, are tipped to be the main polluters of the, or depletion of the ozone layer for that matter, as not taking the needed commitment, especially from the rich nations, to curb or what's apparently appearing to be a climate change, which if not controlled, then will harm humans on the planet?
Yeah, absolutely. From the global talks and from the various COPs that have taken place in the last several years, even starting all the way from the Kyoto Protocol, coming to the Durban COP 2009, and then all the way to the Paris Agreement in 2015, and even the recent Madrid meeting. You see that what you are saying is being echoed all the time, that the rich nations should actually commit more in terms of trying to curb these pollutants, especially the GHCs, so that at least they can minimize the warming trend that we have been seeing in the last several years. However, you can see some of the rich nations at some point they don't want to commit, like the US, for example, where they don't want to, when other nations are ratifying some of these agreements, themselves they don't want to, and so on. Of course, there is a need to have a trade-off between probably removing the old kind of technology which contributes to more maybe pollution versus the more environmental friendly kind of technology. And therefore, I would think that there is need to continue debating and talking about these things and seeing whether some of those who are not so ready to commit, whether they can commit, so that we see if we can reduce the level of warming that is currently being observed globally. Which
is equally, according to a report done in one of the universities in the UK, is leading to depression and other health effects across the world, and equally leading to the wildfires, the bushfires. We are seeing the sort of the abnormal rainfall that continues to hit many parts of the country. But equally, it's another report done by the Sky News agency in the UK, and it's the record-setting ocean warmth report. It said the world oceans yesterday were warmer in 2019 than any other point in human history. These are some of the statistics. It said that the ocean temperatures were around 0.075 Celsius above the 1981-2010 average report, and I quote them. They said, "This measured ocean warming is irrefutable and further proof of global warming. There are no reasonable alternatives aside from the human emissions of heat-trapping gases to explain this heating. And this is a real climate change done by 57 scientific papers in 2013, and it's leading to hotter temperatures, low humidity, and low rainfall and stronger winds across part of the globe." In regard to the COP25 concluded summit in the Spanish capital, Madrid, do you feel then that we are moving towards or hurtling towards a world where we will not be safe before the other convening conference which will be happening in Scotland in the next couple of years?
I think the Madrid meeting, there was no deal.
There was no consensus.
Yeah, that's right. So in other words, there was no deal. Otherwise, a deal would have been there. There are few agreements here and there. And therefore, we are just optimistic that probably because the Paris yes, agreement was a little bit much more promising. But now the Madrid one kind of was stale. And therefore, what I think in the next round of meeting is that countries that have committed, because there are over 200 countries that have committed and noted that the global or the climate change is a reality. that they go back to their drawing board, try to find out the best way of in negotiations to agree on certain, because it's all about diplomacy. Sometimes you may never force countries like maybe the US and others, maybe to toe the line, or China, for instance, where their production depends more on this technology that is being, queried and so on. And therefore, I think the best way forward would be for countries to look back at what has happened and see the gaps that they may need to address, and therefore come up with a better deal come Stockholm meeting.
Okay, and that will be happening in Scotland. And do you then believe that it's a matter of leadership here, the willing leadership? Because Donald Trump, after coming to office, said it was Hawks Agreement, it was signed under Obama. And equally, it has been a culture in White House ever since he was elected to pull out from international agreements, including the nuclear agreements with Iran. And therefore, do you believe, or what's happening at the moment, at the Kenyan level, at the continental level, and at the international level, that there's need for appetite in terms of controlling or keeping things under control when it comes to climate?
Yeah, I think according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, we are all set as a global community to agree that it is for the benefit of the society. And therefore, I tend to think, not dwelling into the politics of these issues, because of course they are also politics, I guess that it is important to just do this for the sake of humanity, for the sake of our agricultural systems, for the water systems, and our health, because all these things affect each and every parcel of this global community or society. And therefore, all countries need to come together and try to talk, with statistics, with reality of things, rather than just probably just wishy-washing things, while if you have evidence. Because one thing I can say as you finish is that data never lies. Data tells you the truth. If it is one, not two. And therefore, I think we should go back to scientific knowledge, scientific information, statistics, and therefore be evidence-based in order for us to come up with tangible solutions to the current problems. Okay, Dr. Richard Moita, thank you for coming on board. Lovely discussion in matters regarding climate and your predictions in the country, and equally taking stock of the international developments. Thank you so much for coming on board. I do appreciate your time. You're welcome. Asante sana. Well, I think this is where we come to an end here on the program, and we need to be moving there. Yes, Linda is standing by on the other end, and this is where we come to an end here on the program. From me, Ayub Abdikadir, and the team here in Lavington. We'll see you tomorrow, Thursday. Linda will be here with an economic debate, and we'll be tackling from the angle of President Uhuru Kenyatta wanting to revamp the economy despite the warnings given by the World Bank and the Central Bank of Kenya that 2020 will not be any better than 2019. She is on the other end of the studio, and I throw it back to her.
Thank you so much, Ayub. And I'm not standing by to add anything or subtract anything from the discussions that we have, but technically to tell you, thank you so much for keeping us company right from the word go. We call it a wrap, and we get to see you tomorrow, same time, same place, to enjoy the rest of your viewing. Thank you.